Hello everyone, and welcome back to Go, Reading Irish Myths and Legends, with myself, Dr. Emmett Taylor. Here, we read out of copyright academic translations of medieval Irish literature. No retellings or reimaginings, just the words of medieval Ireland, right to your ears. This week we'll be reading Scéla Mucce Meic, the story of Meic Da Thó's pig, which is, by far, one of my favourite pieces. This is a story from the Ulster Cycle, the collection of tales centered around the character Cuchulainn and the key narrative Tombo Cúilnge, but, interestingly, neither Cuchulainn nor any connection to the Táin appear in our text. Instead, we can identify it as an Ulster Cycle tale due to the presence of other notable characters associated with that branch of the tradition, such as Ailill and Medb, who we first met back in Aisling Oingeasa, as well as Conchobar Mac Nessa, whose physician also appears in that tale. In this tale, we also find a collection of heroes, or legendary warriors, such as Cedd Mac Magach, Conall Cernach, Lugaid Mac Conroy, and Cusgraith Man Macha. The tale was likely composed somewhere around the year 800, as discussed by Rudolf Turneysen, and is found in 6 manuscripts. Trinity College Dublin Manuscript 1339, otherwise known as the Book of Leinster, Trinity College Dublin Manuscript 1337, Trinity College Dublin Manuscript 1412, British Library Manuscript Harley 5280, Bodleian Library Manuscript Orlington B 512, and National Library of Scotland Manuscript 72.1.36. The version we'll be reading today is a translation by Nora Chadwick, found in her 1927 book, An Early Irish Reader. For those of you interested in a translation in a physical book that is more accessible than this out-of-print one, consider Geoffrey Gantz's Early Irish Myths and Sagas from 1981. Or, if you would prefer to read online, you can find Chadwick's translation available on University College Cork's Irish Sagas Online website, alongside a modern Irish translation by Padraig O'Keevan. Now, with that aside, let us begin. There was a famous king in Leinster. Meic Da Thó was his name. He had a hound. The hound defended the whole of Leinster. The hound's name was Alva, and Ireland was full of its fame. Messengers came from Ailill and Medb asking for the hound. Moreover, at the same time, there also came messengers from Conchobar Mac Nessa to ask for the same hound. They were all made welcome and brought to him in the hall. That is, one of the 6 halls that were in Ireland at that time, the others being the Hall of Da Derga in the territory of Cuilú, and the Hall of Fogel Manach, and the Hall of Macgerio in Breffana, and the Hall of Da Choca in the west of Meath, and the Hall of Bly, the landowner of Ulster. There were 7 doors in that hall, and 7 passages through it, and 7 hearths in it, and 7 cauldrons, and an ox and a salted pig in each cauldron. Every man who came along the passage used to thrust the flesh fork into a cauldron, and whatever he brought out at the first catch was his portion. If he did not obtain anything at the first attempt, he did not have another. Now the messengers were brought to him in his place, that he might learn their requests before the feast. They delivered their message. "We have come from Ailill and from Medb to beg the hound," said the messengers from Connacht. "And there shall be given 300 milk cows at once, and a chariot and 2 horses, the best in Connacht, and their equivalent gifts at the end of a year in addition to this." "We have also come from Conchobar to ask for it," said the messengers from Ulster, "and Conchobar's value as a friend is no less, and to give you treasure and cattle, and the same amount shall be given you at the end of a year, and close friendship will be the result." Thereupon, our Meic Da Thó lapsed into total silence, and in this way he was a whole day, without drink, without food, without sleep, tossing from side to side. Then his wife said to him, "You are making a long fast. There is food beside you, but you do not eat it. What ails you?" He gave the woman no answer, so the woman said, "Sleeplessness fell upon Meic Da Thó at his home. There was something upon which he was brooding without speaking to anyone. He turns away from me, and turns to the wall. The warrior of the Fiann of fierce valour, it causes concern to his prudent wife, that her husband is sleepless." The man, Crimthon the Anar, said, "Do not tell your secret to women. The secret of a woman is not well kept. A treasure is not entrusted to a slave." The woman, "Even to a woman you should speak if nothing should be lost thereby. A thing which your own mind cannot penetrate, the mind of another will penetrate. The man, the hound of Meic Da Thó, evil was the day when they sent for it. Many tall and fair-haired men will fall on account of it. The strife about it will be more than we can reckon. Unless it is given to Conchobar, it will certainly be a churl's act. His hosts will not leave behind them anything more of cattle than of land. If it be refused to Allel, he will hew down a heap of corpses across the country. Mac Mathach will carry us off. He will crush us into bare ashes. The woman, I give advice for you about it. I am not bad at directing an affair. Give it to them both. It is all the same, whoever perishes for it. The man, the counsel you offer is helpful to me. Alva, translation cuts. It is not known by whom it was brought. After that, he arose and made a flourish. Let us then, said he, and the guests who have come to us be well entertained. They remained with him 3 days and 3 nights, and the messengers of Connacht were summoned to him in private. Now, I have been in great perplexity and doubt, said he, until it became clear to me that I should give the hound to Allel and Medivh, and let them come for the hound formally, and they shall have drink and food, and shall take the hound and welcome. The messengers of Connacht were pleased with the intimation. He then went to the messengers from Ulster. I have ceased to have any hesitation, said he, in giving the hound to Conchobar, and let him and the host of Ulster nobles come for it proudly. They shall receive presents, and they will be welcome. The messengers from Ulster were pleased. Now, the people from east and west made their tryst for the same day. Moreover, they did not neglect it. On the same day, the 2 provinces of Ireland made their journey until they reached the door of Meic Da Thó's hall. He went out himself and welcomed them. O heroes, we did not expect you. However, you are welcome. Come into the enclosure. Then they all went into the hall, and half the house was occupied by the Connachtmen, and the other half by the Ulstermen. Now, the house was not a small one. There were 7 doors in it, and 50 paces between each pair of doors. They were not, however, the faces of friends at a feast which were in that house. One party was at feud with the other. There had been warfare between them for 300 years before the birth of Christ. Now, Meic Da Thó's pig was slaughtered for them. For 7 years 60 milk cows supplied its food. On poison, however, it had been nourished, and the massacre of the men of Éireann took place through it. Now the pig was brought to them, and 40 oxen as a relish, and other food as well. Meic Da Thó himself was acting as a steward. Welcome to you, said he. The equal to this cannot be found. Bullocks and pigs are not lacking in Leinster. Whatever is lacking now will be slaughtered for you tomorrow. The pig is good, said Conchobar. It is indeed good, said Allel. How shall the pig be divided, Conchobar? How, said Brichrú mac Carvith, translation cuts, from above. In the place wherein there are brave heroes of the men of Ireland, except by dividing according to brave deeds and trophies. And each of you has hit another over the nose before now. Let it be done, said Allel. Very proper, said Conchobar. We have heroes present who have raided the borderland. You will have need of your young men tonight, O Conchobar, said Shenleach Arith from Conalath Luchra in the west. You have often left a fat bullock of your number lying dead on his back on the Luchra Jedith roads. It was a fatter bullock that you left behind with us, namely your own brother, Cruachnu mac Ruadhlov, from Cruachran Conalath. He was no better, said Lugas mac Cúroy, than the great Loth, the son of Fergus mac Lety, who was left dead by Echvail mac Jedith in Tara Luchra. What do you think of this? Said Celticard mac Uthacard, my having killed Con Gachenis mac Jedith and cut off his head. However, It so fell out among them in the end that a single champion, Cedd Mac Mathach, got supremacy over the men of Ireland. Moreover, he flaunted his valor on high above the valor of the host, and took a knife in his hand, and sat down beside the pig. "Let someone be found among the men of Ireland," said he, "to endure battle with me, or leave the pig to me to divide." Silence fell upon the men of Ulster. "You see that, Logier," said Concobar. "It is intolerable," said Logier, "for Cedd to divide up the pig before our faces." "Stop a bit, Logier, that I might speak to you," said Cedd. "You have a custom among you in Ulster," said Cedd, "that every youth among you, on receiving arms, makes us his objective. Now, you came into the borderland, and we encountered there. You left behind the wheel and the chariot and the horses. You yourself made off with a spear through you. You will not be getting the pig in that way." Thereupon the others sat down. "It is intolerable," said a tall, fair hero who had risen from his place, "that Cedd should divide the pig before our faces." "Whom have we here?" asked Cedd. "He is a better hero than you are," said everyone. "He is Oengus mac Lava Gwavuth of Ulster." "Why is your father called Lav Gwavuth?" asked Cedd. "Well, why?" "I know," said Cedd. "I once went eastward. The alarm was raised around me. Everyone came on, and Lav came too. He threw a cast of his great spear at me. I sent the same spear back to him, and it struck off his hand, so that it lay on the ground. What could bring his son to give me combat?" Oengus sat down. "Keep up the contest further," said Cedd, "or else let me divide the pig." "It is intolerable that you should take precedence in dividing the pig," said a tall, fair hero of Ulster. "Whom have we here?" asked Cedd. "That is Ogan mac Durthacht," said everyone. "He is king of Fermanagh." "I have seen him before," said Cedd. "Where have you seen me?" asked Ogan. "At the door of your house, when I deprived you of a drove of cattle. The alarm was raised around me in the countryside. You came at that cry. You cast a spear at me, so that it stuck out of my shield. I cast the spear back at you, so that it pierced your head and put out your eye. It is patent to the men of Ireland that you are one-eyed. It was I who struck out the other eye from your head." Thereupon the other sat down. "Prepare now, men of Ulster, for further contest," said Cedd. "You will not divide it yet," said Munramor mac Gerin. "Is not that Munramor?" asked Cedd. "I am the man who last cleaned my spears in Munramor," said Cedd. "It is not yet a whole day since I took 3 heads of heroes from you out of your land, and among them the head of your eldest son." Thereupon the other sat down. "Further contest," said Cedd. "That you shall have," said Men mac Salchochan. "Who is this?" asked Cedd. "Men," said everyone. "What's next?" said Cedd. "Sons of rustics with nicknames to contest with me, for it was from me that your father got that name. It was I who struck off his heel with my sword, so that he took away only 1 foot when he left me. What could encourage the son of the 1-footed man to fight with me?" Thereupon the other sat down. "Further contest," said Cedd. "That you shall have," said a grey, tall, very terrible hero of Ulster. Who is this? Asked Cedd. That is Celticard Mac Uthacard, said everyone. Stop a bit, Celticard, said Cedd, unless we are to come to blows at once. I came, Celticard, to the door of your house. The alarm was raised around me. Everyone came up. You came too. You went into the doorway in front of me. You cast a spear at me. I cast another spear at you, so that it pierced your thigh and the upper part of the fork of your legs. You have had a, translation cuts, disease ever since. Since then, neither son nor daughter has been begotten by you. What could encourage you to fight with me? Thereupon, the other sat down. Further contest, said Cedd. That you shall have, said Cuscrith men Macha, the son of Concovar. Who is this? asked Cedd. Cuscrith, said the others. He has the making of a king, to judge from his appearance. No thanks to you, said the boy. Well, said Cedd, it was to us that you came in the first place, boy, for your first trial of arms. There was an encounter between us in that borderland. You left a third of your people behind, and it is thus you went, with a spear through your throat, so that you have not an articulate word in your head, for the spear has injured the tendons of your throat, and it is why you have been nicknamed Cuscruz, the Stammerer, ever since. In this manner he flouted the whole province. Now, while he was making flourishes about the pig with a knife in his hand, they saw Conall Cernach entering. He bounded into the centre of the house. The men of Ulster gave a great welcome to Conall. Then Concobar whipped the hood from his head and made a flourish. I'm glad that my portion is in readiness, said Conall. Who is he who is making the division for you? It has been granted to the man who is dividing it, said Concobar, namely, Cedd Mac Mathach. Is it right, Cedd, asked Conall, that you should be dividing the pig? Then Cedd answered, Welcome, Conall, heart of stone, fierce glowing mass of fire, brightness of ice, red strength of wrath under the breast of the hero who deals wounds, and is victorious in battle. I see the son of Fincilv before me. Whereupon Conall replied, Welcome, Cedd. Cedd Mac Mathach, great hero, heart of ice. Translation cuts. Strong chariot chief of battle, battling sea, beautiful fierce bull, Cedd Mac Magach. It will be clear in our encounter, said Conall, and it will be clear in our separation. There will be a fine saga in Fear Mabruth. There will be ill tidings in Fear Manath. The heroes will see a lion, fierce in battle. There will be a rough onset in this house tonight. Get up from the pig now, said Conall. But what should bring you to it? Asked Cedd. It is quite proper, said Conall, that you should challenge me. I accept your challenge to single combat, Cedd, said Conall. I swear, by what my tribe swears, that since I took a spear in my hand, I have not often slept without the head of a Connachtman under my head, and without having wounded a man every single day and every single night. It is true, said Cedd. You are a better hero than I am. If Onluan were in the house, he would offer you yet another contest. It is a pity for us that he is not in the house. He is, though, said Conall, taking the head of Onluan from his belt and throwing it at Cedd's breast with such force that a gush of blood burst over his lips. Cedd then left the pig, and Conall sat down beside it. Let them come to the contest now, said Conall. There was not found among the men of Connacht a hero to keep it up. They made, however, a wall of shields in a circle around him. for the bad practice had begun among those bad men there of evil casting. Conall then went to divide the pig, and takes the tail end in his mouth, and so attained to a division of the pig. He devoured the hindquarters, a load for 9 men, until he had nothing left of it. Moreover, he did not give to the men of Connacht anything except the 2 forequarters of the pig. Now, the men of Connacht thought their portion was small. They sprang up, and the men of Ulster sprang up, and then they came to close quarters. Then it came to blows over the ears there until the heap on the floor of the house was as high as the wall of the house, and there were streams of blood running through the doors. Then the hosts broke through the doors, so that a great uproar arose, until the blood on the ground of the Lish would have turned a mill shaft, everyone striking his fellow. Then Fergus seized by the roots a great oak which was growing in the midst of the Lish, and wielded it against them. Thereupon they broke forth out of the Lish. A combat takes place at the entrance of the Lish. Then Meic Da Thó went forth, leading the hound, and the hound was let loose among them, to find which of them its instinct would choose. The hound chose the men of Ulster, and he set it to slaughtering the men of Connacht, for the men of Connacht had been routed. They say it is in the plains of Alva that the hound seized the pole of the chariot in which Alel and Medov were. There Fearloga, the charioteer of Alel and Medov, ran it down, striking its body aside, while its head remained on the pole of the chariot. They say, moreover, that Mag Alva is so named from this incident, for Alva was the hound's name. Their flight turned southwards, over Ballachmoon, past Rirun, over Ath Midvin and Mastew, past Drum Criach, which today is called Kildare, past Rathagan into Fich Gulen, to the ford of Mac Lugna, past the hill of the 2 plains, over Capara's bridge. At the ford of the Dog's Head in Farabil, the Dog's Head fell from the chariot. Coming westwards over the hearth of Meath, Fearloga, Alel's charioteer, lay down in the heather, and sprang into the chariot behind the back of Conchobar, and in this way seized his head from behind. "Buy your freedom, Conchobar," said he. "Make your own terms," said Conchobar. "It will not be much," replied Fearloga, "namely, you to take me with you to Evanmacha, and the women of Ulster and their young daughters to sing a panegyric to me every evening, saying, 'Fearloga is my darling.'" There was no help for it, for they did not dare do otherwise for fear of Conchobar. And that day a year hence, Fearloga was sent across Athlone, westwards, and a pair of Conchobar's horses with him, with golden bridles. A tremendously exciting tale. Easily one of my top 5 stories from medieval Ireland, and one that I think is particularly suitable for adaptation to other formats, such as animation or stage plays, given the small number of characters, locations, and it primarily being a dialogue-based text. The tale has drawn quite a bit of attention from scholars over the years, with several different visible trends in conversation. For instance, Julius Perconi, Rudolf Turnheisen, and William Sayers have discussed some of the more obscure elements of the language of Conall and Ket's introductions. John Kelleher interpreted the text as a comedy, or one with intentionally humorous elements, while William Sayers and Sarah Sheehan have discussed the intersection of wounds and shame in the tale. The story has been the location of one of many scholarly skirmishes of yesteryear, arguing for or against the relationship between this story and other Irish tales that deal with a special portion allotted to champion warriors, and similar descriptions of a Gaulish practice in the lost classical work of Posidonius. Today, tactfully avoiding the old blood-stained battleground where links between this tale and classical sources have been debated, I would like to turn our attention to the topic of heroes, and of these heroes, the subculture they exist within. To start, we need to immediately grapple with one of those troublesome words which twists like snakes in our mind: hero. What precisely is a hero? Well, unhelpfully, the word has a wide range of different uses, both in standard modern usage of the term and in the scholarship of medieval Irish literature. Unhelpfully, many of these different senses of hero clash with each other. This makes discussing the legendary heroes of medieval Ireland quite challenging, and I have more than once had conversations with students discussing if we can or cannot consider people like Cuchulainn heroes, conversations which are ultimately rooted in the confusion caused by the competing senses of the term. For instance, hero can mean protagonist, the central focal figure of a narrative. Alternatively, it can mean a noble, upstanding, or self-sacrificing person. Consider the use of hero to refer to firefighters, for instance. These two definitions can themselves lead to a conflict when you have narratives where an actively bad person is the focal character, and therefore is a hero in the first sense, but not in the second. To push things further, hero is used to refer to superhuman figures from classical literature who were not deities, such as Odysseus, Achilles, or Hercules before his apotheosis. This, in turn, also leads to conflict, as while in the Iliad, Odysseus can be considered a hero in this third sense, that he is a classical superhuman non-deity, the fact that he isn't the protagonist means he is not a hero in the first sense, and his more ethically dubious activities mean he is not one in the second sense. This, in turn, leads to even more confusion, because while using hero to refer to these superhuman classical figures feels the most appropriate and authentic, as our word hero is ultimately derived from a Latin word which itself is derived from a Greek word to refer to figures such as this, it isn't used exactly in this same sense that we would imagine in these early materials. The Roman poet Virgil adheres to what we might expect hero to mean, using it to describe a superhuman figure descended from a classical deity, when he refers to Aeneas as such. But Cicero disrupts this standard sense, referring to the distinctly historical and mundane humans of Plato and Aristotle as heroes. The clock can be turned back on this even further, revealing even more variation and contradiction about this term, such as the conflict between using hero in Greek myths compared to its use in the Greek hero cults. But I think you get the point. What a hero is or is not is wholly dependent on the sense that we are using it in. While there are several competing and clashing uses of hero in the scholarship discussing medieval Irish literature, the broad sense that encapsulates most of these and fixes the standard sense employed in the current scholarship is that heroes are exceptional, aristocratic warriors in the literature, like Cuchulainn and Finn MacCool. This sense happens to fit the use of the term used by one of the scribes of the Annals of Tigernach, when they wrote, Mors Cuchulainn fortissimo heros Scotorum, the death of Cuchulainn, the bravest or strongest hero of the Irish. What we get here is that Cuchulainn is a hero, that there are other heroes, because this adjective is in the superlative, which infers that Cuchulainn is surpassing others in this function, and that being brave or strong or perhaps both is, presumably, important to being whatever a hero is. So now that my academic hand-wringing about what a hero is and is not is out of the way, let's look at our story and what it can tell us about heroes in medieval Ireland, drawing on this seminal piece of scholarship by Philip O'Leary, Contention at Feasts in Early Irish Literature from Aigsha 20 from 1984, and a chapter of my doctoral dissertation on heroes. Medieval Ireland was an extremely hierarchical society, with the relative positions of different peoples and professions painstakingly laid out in the early Irish law tracts. Some of these professions have further subcategories, such as poets, who have between 7 and 14 subcategories of differing status and obligation, and Liam Brethnach has, in my mind, rather convincingly argued that this is the result of cultural influence from Christianity, where there is an emphasis placed on the hierarchical divisions within monastic communities. Heroes, aristocratic warriors, exist somewhere near the top of this society, but lack a formal internal hierarchy shaped by tests, trials, or other measurements of skill. Many heroes show an intense desire to be recognized as supreme, the best of the best, the greatest warrior who surpasses their allies and enemies, as we see in Scéla Mucce Meic and other tales. However, being warriors, the only way to prove that they are superior to another is through violence. As we see in our story, Céad repeatedly shows himself to be the superior hero by being able to cite specific instances where he defeated his challenger, or is able to attack the challenger's prestige through other means. However, This is where things get interesting. As O'Leary notes, the great challenge of this is that prestige and supremacy of a hero is a matter of public recognition. Being the best warrior isn't actually what heroes strive for. It is being perceived to be the greatest warrior and receiving the adoration and honor that that perception bestows upon them. This means that in order to achieve supremacy, heroes don't need to simply be the best. They need to convince the general public that they are the best. Because raiding and warfare that heroes engage in often takes place in foreign territories or on the periphery of society, the members of a hero's society do not have the chance to witness their martial activities in person, but instead must rely on their activities being related to them, which creates the very interesting social scenarios we see unfold in our tale. Competing over the portion, Cedd displays a rather exceptional talent at playing the game of heroism, because Cedd knows this is a performance. While, at a glance, you might take the challenges to Cedd to be conversations between Cedd and the Ulster heroes, Cedd is actually putting on a show for the audience. Consider that he repeatedly asks the audience who his challengers are. He likely already knows their identities as he has these stories about them immediately to mind, but he feigns not knowing them, like he is a mean teenager asking, "And you are?" He asks the audience who is challenging him. He does not address the warriors directly, and the audience tells him. In doing so, he is able to draw the audience into the dialogue and position his challenger as someone ultimately inconsequential in Cedd's life. Then, when the Ulster heroes address him, he is able to, functionally, cite his sources for why he is superior, pointing to wounds, nicknames, and the identities of his challenger's fathers, things that are either visible or public knowledge, and using these as evidence for stories that he tells about why he is the greater warrior. Cedd's mastery at playing the game of heroism is only surpassed by Conall Cernach, who has several very clever tactical counterplays he makes against Cedd. For instance, if you notice, when he arrives, he immediately reframes the challenge. He is challenging Cedd, but he says that he considers it good that Cedd is challenging him. He immediately restructures the conflict in the mind of the audience, operating under the assumption that he is superior and that Cedd needs to prove alternatively. Conall's evidence of his superiority is far more abstract than Cedd's, describing his extreme propensity for collecting the severed heads of his enemies, standard warrior behavior in the Irish texts, which is an extremely widespread element of Conall's identity, found in many different texts. However, the abstract nature of Conall's claim is also far bolder. He refers not to defeating specific individuals, but as having slain abstract swaths of Connacht warriors. Cedd, realizing he has been beat, then tries his own counterplay. He attempts to scuttle the contest, rendering the entire thing invalid. While Conall may be superior to him, Conall cannot be recognized as the supreme warrior, as Cedd claims that Anluan, a character we know from elsewhere in the tradition as one of Cedd's brothers, Cedd and his brothers also being Conall's maternal uncles, is superior to Conall. As Anluan is absent, this should functionally render the contest null, as Cedd's claim cannot be confirmed or denied. However, Conall, by producing Anluan's head, is able to provide a piece of evidence for his previous claim of taking the heads of Connachtmen, and counteracts Cedd's attempt to scuttle the debate by showing that he is superior to Anluan, providing evidence just as Cedd has done for his claims. Not only this, Cedd's attempt to outmaneuver Conall in this public performance has put him into an unwinnable situation, because he admitted that Anluan is a superior warrior to himself, and therefore, by defeating Anluan, Conall shows that he is superior to Cedd. In the introduction to his paper, on the topic of prestige and conflicts over status between heroes, O'Leary notes that the recognition of one's peers is absolutely necessary, and the Irish hero can never afford to lose sight of the ever-judging audience. Every moment, every action, every choice, loss, victory, failed obligation is subject to intense scrutiny, as the ever-shuffling scoreboard of heroism changes the position of each hero in relation to the other. Fact is simply irrelevant in this hierarchy, and instead it is determined by the mercurial will of the public, which can be so easily manipulated or misled by heroes, desperate, frantic to achieve glory. And in this, we might ask, is Cuchulainn actually the best hero, or just the best at playing the game? A question that I discuss in my thesis, and one that I intend to publish on in the next year or so. But for now, that is all, and you shall hear from me again soon. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, you can contact me at irishlegendspodcast@gmail.com.